Welcome. Welcome, everyone. As diversity, equity, and inclusion faces extinction, where do ethics fit into the workplace decisions? Yes. So as DEI initiatives are facing increasing challenges, HR leaders must step up and ensure that organizations uphold ethical leadership. Just because something is legal doesn't mean that it's ethical. And in today's workplace, employees, customers, and stakeholders expect companies to do what's right. Welcome to doing what's right. Ethical leadership in an era where diversity, equity, and inclusion is being erased. I am thrilled to have you all here today. Well, let's go ahead and get started and make this session productive. So good morning, everyone. Whether it is a sunny day here in Simpsonville, South Carolina, or maybe you're starting your day with your first cup of coffee, maybe the second one, maybe the third one. Welcome. For those of you who may not know me, I'm Elga Lejarza, and I have had the privilege of working in human resources for 30 years. Yes, you heard that right. That's 3 decades. And I still feel like there is so much more to learn. One of my long-term goals is to continue growing, continue learning, continue supporting HR professionals for the next 20 years. Yes, maybe even set a Guinness World Record for 50 years in the HR field. And also the founder of HRTrainingClasses.com, where I have been very fortunate to help hundreds of HR professionals navigate workplace challenges and prepare for their HRCI and the shrm certification exams. Nothing brings me more joy than seeing HR professionals succeed and reach their full potential. So if you're looking to grow in your HR career, I invite you to check out our website, HRTrainingClasses.com, where you will find nearly 100 training programs that are designed to help you thrive. Well, let's go ahead and dive in. But before we do that, I want to clarify that I am not an employment law attorney. I always wanted to be one. So any recommendations or insights that I provide are based on my professional knowledge, on my experience, and they reflect what I will do in a similar situation. However, if you require legal advice, I strongly recommend consulting with a qualified employment law attorney. This training session is being recorded and will be available on our website for future references. Well, let's see what I have prepared for you this morning. We're going to go over legal versus ethical. What is the difference? We're going to go over the business case for ethical leadership, DEI in 2025, ethics in a shifting landscape. We're going to go over some scenarios and discussion about what will you do, how to lead with integrity and ethics, the risks of unethical leadership, consequences for employers, but also for employees. And then we should be able to have time for some Q&A. All righty, so here's a scenario. And I will ask you to, when you give me your answers, if you can please use the chat. I'm going to keep an eye on the chat over here. All righty, so the scenario is your organization is facing political pressure and decides to remove all DEI language for its job postings, website, and training materials. The decision is made to avoid public backlash and maintain a neutral image. No laws are being broken. The company continues to follow EEOC requirements. However, employees, especially those from underrepresented groups, express concern that the organization no longer values inclusion or belonging. employee morale and trust in leadership begin to decline. So question, what is the most ethical course of action for HR in this situation? Support leadership decision. DEI is not a legal requirement, and removing it avoids controversy. B, recommend pausing all DEI activities until the political climate improves. C, propose revising DEI messaging to reflect inclusion through value-based language while reinforcing the organization's commitment to fairness and belonging. Or D, immediately file a formal complaint with the EEOC citing a hostile work environment. Thank you so much for responding. Oh, hello, Lori. Hello, Sherelle. Thank you so much. I see. Hi, Kevin. Hi, Sherelle. Let's see. Thank you. Thank you for everybody who responded. I think everybody agreed. Very good. So the correct answer is C, right? Propose revising DEI messaging to reflect inclusion through various value-based language while reinforcing, like it says here, the organization's commitment to fairness and to belonging. So while diversity, equity, and inclusion may not be legally mandated, ethical leadership requires doing what is right, not just what is lawful. So removing all DEI references may be legal, but it erodes trust, harms culture, and undermines the organization's values. So by taking a strategic and ethical approach, reframing DEI messaging to emphasize belonging, fairness, and integrity, we can all support both business objectives and employee well-being. So let's look at understanding the difference between legality and ethics. This is going to be critical in HR, also in leadership. So when we talk about legal compliance, compliance is about following the law. It ensures that employment decisions are going to meet the minimum legal standards, such as adhering to Title VII of the Civil Rights Act of 1964, the Americans with Disability of 1990, and EEO laws. So, for example, ensuring that a job posting does not contain discriminatory language, or that hiring managers are not making decisions based on race, based on gender, based on religion. Now, ethics, on the other hand, is about doing what is morally right, even when the law doesn't require it. Ethical decisions reflect a commitment to values like fairness, equity, and respect. So in DEI, this means making choices that promote inclusion and belonging, such as actively seeking out diverse talent, addressing unconscious bias in hiring, or supporting employee resource group, even if it's not a legal mandate. So, for example, you're not legally allowed to discriminate based on race in hiring, right? Now, ethics, you recognize that your current leadership team lacks diversity, and you voluntarily launch a mentoring program to create pathways for advancement for underrepresented employees. So bottom line, compliance keeps you out of trouble, but ethics moves the organization forward. So in DEI, ethics means doing what is right, not just doing what is legal, but what is right. So legal but unethical actions, right? We can be doing something that is legal because it's not illegal. We're not violating the law, but it could be perceived as unethical actions. Some behaviors, while legal, may be considered unethical. For example, a company may legally refuse to provide paid parental leave, but ethically, it may be seen as failing to support employees' well-being. Illegal but ethical action. Sometimes individuals or organizations may choose to act against the law because they believe it is the ethical thing to do. For example, during the civil rights movement, individuals participated in peaceful protests that were illegal at the time, but were widely regarded as ethical actions. So the gray area between legality and ethics, many workplace decisions fall into a gray area where they may not be explicitly illegal, but still raise ethical concerns. HR professionals, we must learn to navigate these dilemmas effectively. So yes, we want to be obviously in compliance with the law. We have to obey the law. We have that legal responsibility, but we also have an ethical responsibility. There could be some things that could be seen as legal, but if they are unethical, we should not be doing anything that is unethical. Why not? Well, let me ask you, do you want to work in an organization that commits unethical actions? Not me. I don't think that you want to either, right? Do you think that you're going to be able to attract, retain, and keep your employees motivated when we are committing unethical things? Absolutely not. How about as customers? As a customer, do you think I want to do business with an organization that is in compliance with the law, but they are doing things that are morally wrong? No, I don't want to do business with those organizations. I'll go somewhere else where they are also not just in compliance with the law, that legal responsibility, but that they also have an ethical responsibility. So this is interesting. Let's look at some examples of legal. Legal because it's not illegal. We're not breaking the law. Examples of legal, but unethical actions in the workplace. Excluding LGBTQ plus employees from leadership development programs. No, it's not illegal. It's legal in some states without specific protections, because we know there are states that they have protections for the LGBTQ plus community. So it's legal in those states without protection, but it's clearly unethical. How about hiring from personal or referral networks that lack diversity? So what do you think about that? It's not illegal, but perpetuates inequity and limit access for underrepresented groups. How about dismissing employee resource groups, ERGs, affinity groups for LGBTQ plus employees as not business critical? It's legal, yeah, it's legal, but undermines inclusion and employee belonging. How about removing pronouns or preferred names fields from HR systems? May not violate any federal laws, but sends a message of exclusion to transgender and non-binary employees. How about avoiding conversations about race or bias to stay neutral? What do you think about that? Legal, but you know what? Silence can be interpreted as complicity, and it's going to erode trust. Using coded language in job posting that discourages diverse applicants. For example, a strong cultural fit is legal, but reinforces unconscious bias. How about firing an employee who complains about microaggression if not linked to a protected class? May not be a Title VII violation, but it is unethical retaliation tactic. Removing the pronouns or preferred name fields from the HR systems, again, may not violate any federal laws, but sends that message of exclusion. Oh, no, I already said that. Ethics builds trust. Why ethical behavior is just as important as legal compliance. So ethics build trust. Employees, customers, and partners are more likely to stay loyal to the organization that do what's right, not just what's legal. So it goes back to, I'm sure you don't want to work in an organization that you can say, yes, we follow the law, we're in compliance with the law. But the company is committing unethical actions. So you know that as the company is damaging its reputation, you're also damaging your own reputation. Compliance sets the floor. So compliance sets the floor. So following the law is just the beginning, because true leadership asks, what is the right thing to do? Ethics is about going beyond the minimum to create a workplace that reflects our values. Third, ethical cultures reduce risk. Companies with strong ethical foundations are less likely to deal with legal issues, toxic work environments, or bad press. So it's not just about protecting the business, it's about creating long-term sustainability. Then we have ethics protects reputation. One decision can change how people see your organization forever. So as organizations, we need to be very careful of the actions that we are doing, because we can lose the business forever. And even if it is technically legal, if it feels wrong, it probably is wrong. Ethics is the difference between surviving and thriving. And finally, ethical leadership attracts talent. You're going to be able to attract them. You're going to be able to retain them. You're going to be able to keep those employees engaged, motivated. You're going to be able to retain your human capital. Especially now, people want to work for employers that align their personal values. When your organization leads with fairness, with inclusion, with integrity, you are going to attract the high performers, the high achievers who wants to make a difference in your organization. So ethical leadership is not longer just a nice to have. It is a business imperative that directly impacts a company's success. This is going to be the difference if your organization is going to be able to survive in this competitive environment. It's going to make you or break you. So let's start with trust. Ethical leadership builds trust and credibility. Employees, customers, stakeholders are going to be more likely to engage with organizations that demonstrate integrity. So when leadership upholds ethical standards, employees feel confident that they will be treated fairly. And customers feel good about supporting the business. Now, ethical leadership enhances employee morale and retention. When employees believe that they are working for a company that values honesty, fairness, and respect, are less likely to leave. High employee turnover, we all know, is very costly. Hiring and training new employees takes time and a lot of money. Ethical leadership helps create a workplace where employees want to stay. I have differences. I always felt like I have differences. I may sound different for some people, not for me. However, I want my differences to be, above everything else, respected. I want my differences to be respected, to be valued, to be included, to be embraced, to be appreciated. I'm not going to stay in a company where my differences are disrespected. So ethical leadership is going to help create that workplace where employees, they want to stay. Now let's talk about risk. Ethical leadership reduces legal and compliance risk. A company that prioritizes ethics is less likely to face lawsuits. We don't want them. Fines. We don't want that. Regulatory penalties. Many corporate scandals, such as workplace discrimination, lawsuit, or fraud, could have been prevented with a strong leadership. Beyond risk, ethics also strengthen brand reputation and customer loyalty. In today's world, customers actively research the companies that they support. They care about corporate values and they want to spend their money, with businesses that operate with integrity. A single unethical decision, whether it is mistreating employees, engaging in discrimination, misleading customers, can destroy a company's reputation, overnight. Moreover, ethical leadership fosters a culture of accountability and fairness. When leaders lead with integrity, it sets the tone for the entire organization. Employees feel comfortable speaking about issues, knowing that their concerns are going to be addressed fairly. So this creates a more transparent, productive workplace. Now let's discuss the financial impact. Companies that operate ethically often are going to outperform those that don't. Ethical businesses have lower costs associated with legal disputes, higher productivity from those engaged employees, and a stronger brand loyalty from the customers. Research has shown that ethical companies tend to have that higher productivity in the long run because they build sustainable business model. And finally, ethical leadership is going to attract top talent, but also investors. Today's job seekers, particularly millennials and Gen Zs, they actively seek employers that align with their values. Well, likewise, investors are paying closer attention to ethical business practices when deciding where they are going to be putting their money. Companies known for ethical leadership have a competitive advantage, a competitive edge. They're going to be the ones who are going to win in the market. They're going to be the ones that are going to outperform the competition and succeed in the future. So as HR leaders, we must ask, are we fostering ethical leadership within our organizations? Are we prioritizing integrity? Not just because it's the right thing to do, but because it's also the smart business decision. Ethics is no longer optional. It's the foundation for long-term success. Well, let's talk about where we are today with DEI and why ethical leadership is more important than ever in the changing landscape. We need to have these difficult conversations. We need to talk about this. We should not close our eyes and say, let's just ignore this. This is very controversial. Let's not talk about it. We have to have the difficult conversations. You know that when we procrastinate having difficult conversations, because they are difficult, they are gonna become more difficult. So let's talk about the evolution of DEI from momentum. I remember 2020, right? From momentum to backlash. So over the past decade, we have seen an explosion of DEI initiatives. Companies recognize the importance of diverse teams, fair hiring practice, and inclusive cultures. However, today, we're seeing a shift, a growing resistance for DEI efforts. Lawsuits, political debates, misconceptions that have painted DEI as unnecessary or even divisive. This backlash is making many organizations hesitant to continue their DEI commitments. But here's the truth. Just because DEI is being challenged doesn't mean it's any less important. In fact, this is the time when ethical leadership matters the most. Now, let's look at a major challenge companies face today. What I call the compliance versus commitment dilemma. Some organizations are saying, well, if the law doesn't require DEI, then why should we bother? The problem is that legality doesn't equal ethics. A company can technically be compliant while still fostering an unfair, exclusive, or biased workplace. The real question is, are we doing the bare minimum, or are we truly committed to fostering an inclusive and equitable culture? Ethical leadership means going beyond compliance. It means making the right decisions, even when they are not legally required. So let's look at the business case for DEI, ethical and financial impact. Ethics and business success are not separate conversations. The studies consistently show that diverse teams drive innovation, profitability, employee engagement. Why? Because when employees feel valued, included, appreciated, respected, embraced, I'm going to include myself, we perform better. Ethical leadership isn't just about doing the right thing. It's also about creating a competitive advantage. Customers, investors, job seekers today expect companies to prioritize inclusivity. And those that don't, they risk losing market share, talent, and credibility. So when people say DEI is not necessary anymore, ask them, can your business afford to ignore it? When DEI fails, business suffers. Let's look at some real world examples of what happened when companies abandon DEI. Some organizations that cut back on DEI efforts are now facing employee walkouts, nightmares, lawsuits. We have seen companies forced to backtrack after realizing that removing DEI programs led to toxic workplace culture and retention issues. On the other hand, there are companies that stay the course, continue DEI despite resistance, and today they are thriving. Their ethical resilience have paid off, strengthening their reputation and financial success. These examples prove that ethics and business sustainability go hand in hand. Now let's expand on HR's role in upholding ethics when DEI is under attack. We have discussed how HR can maintain ethical DEI efforts and ensure that inclusive policies stay in place. But there are additional steps that HR leaders can take. Educating leadership on the long-term benefits of DEI. One of the biggest challenges HR professionals face is leadership buy-in. We know that. When DEI efforts are questioned, it's often because decision makers don't see the direct value. This is where HR must step in, not just as a compliance enforcer, but as an educator using our advisory role. Remember, we provide advices, recommendation, we provide training. So as an educator, we need to communicate the long-term business benefits of DEI, increase innovation, higher employee engagement, a stronger financial performance, and a better company reputation. If leadership only sees DEI as an optional initiative, they'll cut it. They will cut it at the first sign of resistance. So HR must ensure that decision makers understand why DEI is not just ethical, but is strategic. Developing creative, value-based initiative. If your company faces legal or political limitations on DEI initiative, that doesn't mean inclusivity has to disappear. Instead, HR can find creative ways to embed DEI values into the company culture. For example, instead of labeling a program as DEI initiative, focus on leadership development for diverse talent or inclusive workplace training. The essence of these programs remains the same. They support fairness, equity, and inclusion, but they may be more acceptable in organizations facing external pressure. I know, I understand. There is a lot of external pressure. Ethical HR leaders find a way to uphold their values, even when roadblocks appear. Finally, HR can be the only advocate for DEI. We need to empower employees to create inclusive cultures within their own teams. That means giving managers and employees the tools that they need to foster belonging and respect, whether it is through inclusive hiring practices, employee resource group, or open conversations about workplace equity. HR should create a culture where everyone is going to be responsible for inclusion. DEI is not just an HR initiative. This is a company-wide commitment. When employees feel that they play a role in fostering inclusivity, the organization becomes more resilient to those external pressures. This is where HR leaders step in. We are the ethical backbone of our organizations. Even if DEI policies are being questioned, you still have the ability, the responsibility to ensure your workplace remains inclusive and fair for everyone. Employees need to know that HR is still a place of equity, a place of support. Ethical HR leaders push for fair hiring, unbiased promotions, and inclusive policies, no matter what external pressures exist. If DEI is being erased in your organization, you have to be the one advocating for fairness. Let's not call it diversity, equity, and inclusion, but this is about advocating for fairness, for ethics, for integrity for everyone. We do this by educating leadership on DEI's long-term business benefits, developing values-based alternative when traditional DEI programs are at risk. And most importantly, empowering our employees to champion inclusivity in their daily work. The moment we let external resistance dictate our ethics, that moment that we let external resistance dictate our ethics, we lose our credibility as HR professionals. We don't want that to happen. And we need to be congruent on what we're saying and what we're doing. We need to be consistent, right? It's not like Elga says one thing, but then the next day she says something else. And then the next day she says something else, depending on those external forces. We gotta be consistent and congruent. So I'll leave you with this. Ethical leadership isn't about waiting for laws to tell us what's right. It's about choosing to do what is right, even when no one is watching. So are you ready to take that stand? Now, we have talked about the challenges DEI is facing today, but ethics aren't theoretical. They are practical. So let's put it into action. So I'm going to walk us through 5 real world scenarios that HR professionals deal with every day. So as I present each one, I want you to think about 3 things. 3 things. Okay? Number 1, is it legal? Number 2, is it ethical? And number 3, what will you do as an HR leader? Okay, so we'll go through 5 scenarios. So think, is it legal? Is it ethical? And what are you gonna do as an HR leader? You ready? Okay, scenario number 1. A hiring manager rejects a candidate based on culture fit. So a manager is going to reject the candidate based on culture fit. Okay. The hiring manager claims the candidate is qualified, but won't fit in. What is that cultural fit? No clear performance-related reason is given for the rejection. So, is this legal? Is this ethical? What will you do as an HR? So I want you to think about that. The hiring manager rejects a candidate based on culture fit. Claim this person won't fit in, but there's no clear performance-related reasons for this rejection. Is this legal? Is this ethical? What will you do? So, what is the problem here? Okay. Is this illegal? Maybe not if there's no direct evidence of discrimination. Why are we saying that won't fit in? Is it because the majority of the employees, the workforce are mostly younger generations, and this person is from an older generation? Okay, then in that case, yes, right? In that case, you can definitely agree with me that that would be illegal if we are basing that on that person's age, right? Now, is this ethical? Not necessarily. Culture fit is used often to disguise bias, excluding diverse candidate without saying it outright. So what do we do as an HR? Okay. So as an HR, we can challenge the manager, the hiring manager, ask them to define. I love that. Ask them to define. How do you define culture fit, right? If it's about shared values like teamwork, innovation, well, I'm going to say that's definitely valid. But if it is about shared backgrounds rather than the skills, then you need to step in and ensure fair hiring practices. Okay, let's look at this other scenario. DEI budget is eliminated, but leadership expects business as usual. So this one is tough, right? So your company has quietly removed all funding for DEI initiative. There's no money for mentorship programs or hiring diversity efforts or for ERGs, affinity groups, but employees still expect these things. So they have come to rely on them. So is this illegal? Is this ethical? What are we going to do? So is this illegal? Of course not, okay, right? It's not illegal. Companies can remove their DEI efforts and programs and initiatives and ERG groups, right? So no, companies can allocate their budget whatever way, however they want. But is it ethical? Well, this is another story. Because when organizations claim to value DEI, but cut the funding behind it, then they're being performative. So as an HR, what do? We get creative. If funding is gone, look for non-financial ways to continue inclusion efforts. Peer-led mentoring, employee-driven resource groups, embedding DEI into everyday leadership training. You don't need a big budget to maintain a culture of belonging. I belong here, a culture of respect. Thank you, Heather. Thank you. Okay, let's look at scenario number 3. So employees express discomfort about a religious or LGBTQ plus inclusion event. Some employees argue that inclusion efforts exclude them. HR is pressured to cancel events that support diverse groups. How do you balance inclusivity while respecting different opinions? How do we balance that? So number one, okay? So number one, is it illegal to hold these events? Absolutely not. Companies have the right to celebrate diversity. But is it ethical to ignore the concerns of employees who feel uncomfortable? So as HR, our role is to balance inclusivity. You may explain that inclusion events aren't about excluding others. They're about recognizing, about supporting those underrepresented groups. You can also encourage open participation, letting employees choose which initiative they engage with. The goal is education. Education, so we can be united, not division. Couple more. A company policy unintentionally, indirect, unintentionally disadvantages a minority group. A remote work policy requires employees to live within a certain state. This disproportionately impacts employees from diverse backgrounds. Discussion. Should HR intervene? How do you advocate for ethical change? So, number one, is this illegal? Not necessarily. But is it ethical to implement policies without considering unintended consequences? HR should raise the issue with leadership instead of eliminating remote work altogether. So maybe a compromise, right? So maybe offering relocation assistance, maybe a phased transition plan. Ethical HR leaders advocate. We advocate for fairness when policies negatively impact certain employees. Number 5, a high performer engages in microaggression. It's a high performer. They engage in microaggression. But leadership ignores it. Why do you think they ignore it? Because it's a high performer. Okay? This is also a tough one. So a top performer repeatedly makes offensive remarks toward minority employees. Complaints are filed, but leadership is hesitant to take action. What should HR do when ethical violations are dismissed? So number 1, is this illegal? I will say it depends. If these microaggressions contribute to a hostile work environment, yeah, it could be. But is it ethical? Absolutely not. Turning a blind eye to discrimination damages workplace culture and trust. So as human resources, we have a responsibility to act. If leadership refuses, document everything. Offer training on inclusive communication. And if the behavior continues, we have to escalate the issue. Protecting the superstars, the star performers at the expense of ethics, we don't want to go there. That's a dangerous game. Let's talk about what it really means to lead with integrity and ethics in today's workplace, especially in this era where DEI is being erased, it's under attack. Ethical leadership isn't about following the law. It's about doing what's right, even when it's hard, even when it is unpopular, or even when it is inconvenient. So how do we make sure that we are leading with integrity? Well, set the example. Integrity starts where? At the top. Leaders must model ethical behavior in all decisions and interactions. Employees take cues from leadership. They follow their leaders. What you do matters. What you do matters more than what you say. Make values-based decisions, not just legally compliant ones. Just because something is legal doesn't mean that it's right. Ethical leaders go beyond compliance to uphold fairness, honesty, and equity. Create a culture of psychological safety. Employees must feel safe speaking up about ethical concerns. Encourage open dialogue. Protect whistleblowers from retaliation and ensure ethical transparency. Hold everyone accountable, no exceptions. Ethics should apply equally to executives, to managers, and to employees. Enforce consequences consistently, even for those high-performing individuals. Be transparent and communicate ethical expectations clearly. Define what ethical leadership looks like within the organization. Communicate company values regularly and incorporate them into our decision-making. Encourage ethical decision-making at all levels. Empower your employees to raise those ethical concerns without any fear of reprisal, without any fear of retaliation. Provide ethical training and support ethical leadership development. Adapt and innovate. Ethical leadership must evolve. Ethics change. with new societal expectations. Leaders must stay informed. Education, training, development. DEI should be embedded into leadership, not treated as a separate initiative. Why? What are the consequences of unethical leadership? We're obeying the law. Who cares about being ethical? Well, I'm sure that you care, just like I do. And I'm sure that as customers, we also care, right? So the risk, the consequences for employers and employees, loss of employee trust and engagement. Employees disengage when they see unethical behavior being tolerated. I don't want to work there. Lack of trust leads to decreased morale. Again, I refuse to work in that company. Bye. Increased legal and compliance risk. Violation of labor laws, discrimination policies, compliance standards, lawsuit, fines, government investigation, your reputation as a business destroyed. Was I talking about that? That's a very scary one. Damage to company reputation. You could be very profitable, a large organization, and if customers and your employees find out that you have been acting unethical, that's it. That could be the end of your company. Consumers and investors avoid unethical companies. I'm done. I'm not doing business. There are some companies that are not doing business anymore for being unethical. Negative media exposure can destroy a company's public image, financial loss, and business instability. Ethical scandals lead to a stock drop, loss of customers, revenue decline. Yeah, and then they're going to be blamed. Oh, it's because the weather has been raining a lot. That's why our sales are declining. Okay. I respect you, company. You want to hide the sun with just one finger? Go right ahead. Mismanagement and corruption can result in bankruptcy. Toxic culture and employee burnout. Ethical violations create a hostile work environment. Employees feel pressure to compromise their values, leading to stress and burnout. Loss of top talent and difficulty in hiring. High-performing employees seek workplaces that align with their values. Companies with ethical issues are going to struggle to attract top-tier professionals, to retain them, to keep them motivated. Leadership accountability. The higher the rank, the greater the responsibility. Executives, set the ethical tone for the organization. Leaders must be held accountable to maintain integrity at all levels. Okay, I definitely wanted to cover this. Again, we have to have difficult conversations. Let's not ignore them, okay? So let's talk about the term DEI. Let's just be honest, right? Over the past few years, the term DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion, has unfortunately become politicized and in many cases misunderstood. But the truth is, the heart of DEI is rooted in something much deeper: fairness, opportunity, belonging. I was talking to somebody yesterday who said, oh, because we're federal contractors or subcontractors, I understand the external pressures, right? They said, we have to redo our entire handbook and remove everything that says DEI, and we just switch everything to be an equal employer, opportunity employer. I understand, okay? So just some ideas that I wanted to come up with. Rebranding options for DEI. I mean, it's like we hear DEI and silence, crickets, nobody wants to say anything, right? belonging, respect, opportunity, fairness, access, inclusion, inclusive culture, and growth. People first culture, voices, visibility, and value. Kind of like that one. VVV, VVV, equity and belonging framework. So I really like this one over here. Fairness, belonging, and opportunity. This is my favorite one. Okay. More than just a rebrand, it refocuses on humanity and impact. Unlike traditional DEI language, which can sometimes feel, yes, politicized or misunderstood. So this framework speaks in universally relatable terms. Fairness reflects a commitment to doing what is right for everyone. It emphasizes transparency, equal treatment, consistency on how we live. Belonging captures the emotional core of inclusion. It's about creating an environment where people feel respected, connected, and safe to be themselves. I don't have to pretend to be somebody else. I belong here. Opportunity. Shift the focus from entitlement to access, making sure all employees, regardless of background, have the tools and pathway to succeed. So I just wanted to give you some ideas. Do we have to, because of external pressures or because of people's belief and ideas, which, yes, I'm going to respect. We have to respect the differences, right? We have to recognize them, we have to respect them, and we need to reconcile them, what I call the 3 R's. But I just wanted to give you an idea here, right? About maybe renaming it. I know some companies that's exactly what they're doing. Okay. So leadership pledge. I commit to leading with integrity, holding myself and others accountable, and fostering a workplace where ethics are a priority, not an afterthought. I will speak up against unethical behavior. I will support fairness and inclusion and lead by example, knowing that trust is the foundation of leadership. All righty. I should have known. Elga talks too much. Anyway, I just wanted to let you know about a 2-day compliance and business ethics certificate program that we have on May 13, 2025. Well, as we come to the conclusion of today's session, no, I want to leave you with this important reminder. Ethics are not optional. Just because something is legal doesn't make it right. As leaders, you are the conscience of your organization. When DEI is pushed aside, you must be the one who stands firm. Silence is complicity. Choosing not to speak up when fairness, belonging, and opportunity are under attack is a choice. And it says something. Make sure your silence never speaks louder than your integrity. Please, lead by example. Lead by example, not by fear. Even in uncertain times, leadership rooted in courage, compassion, and consistency builds culture that is going to endure. You don't need a title to do what's right. Every decision, every policy, every conversation is an opportunity to lead with ethics. Remember, even when no one is watching. So as you go back into your workplaces, I challenge you to be the kind of leader who does what is right, not just what's easy or what is allowed. Because the people around you aren't just watching what you say, they are watching what we tolerate. They are watching what you are tolerating. Now more than ever, the workplace needs ethical champions. So my question, will you be one of them? Will you be one of them? If you enjoy, 12 o'clock, I'm doing better. I'm finishing right on time. If you enjoyed this free webinar, I would love to hear from you. Please scan the QR code. Let us know how much you enjoyed today's session. Your feedback help us to continue bringing you more meaningful, relevant, and empowering webinars. Just like this one. Thank you. Thank you and thank you for being part of the conversation, for choosing to lead with ethics. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Stay informed, stay prepared, and stay empowered. And I will see you next month. It's already on the website, my next one. Always trying not to meet your expectations, but to exceed your expectation. Send me an email. There's my email right there. Elga@HRTrainingClasses.com if you want to continue this conversation, or if you have any questions, anything that I can do for you, count on that. Thank you so much, everyone, and have a great rest of the day. Thank you, thank you, thank you, everyone.